friends. Welcome to Sky House Herbs Podcast. I'm Ashley Elenbaas, a clinical herbalist, and in this space, I share my knowledge and experience with plant medicine to help you on your own journey of healing and transformation. Join me in exploring the ancient wisdom of plant spirit medicine and how it can be used to heal the body, mind, and spirit. We'll talk to experts in the field and share stories from people who've been transformed by powerful plant allies. New episodes are released each Monday, so please subscribe. And now, let's explore this mystical world of plant medicine together. Hey everyone, welcome in. Today I'll be sharing with you some of my favorite ways to store herbs and to keep them fresh so that you can use them all year long. Now, right now here in Minnesota, it is like prime harvesting time. So what I have been doing a lot of is harvesting flowers, leaves, bundle drying them, laying them flat to dry. And I want to show you all of the different ways that you can process your herbs so that they can stay fresh and vital all year long. Before I dive into today's content, if you haven't already, please click the subscribe button and also please allow for notifications. That way, every time I have a new video, it comes to your inbox and you can see and follow all of these cool things about the plant world. Also, I always love to hear your comments, so please click the reply button or please comment on my videos and click the like if you find it to be helpful. That way, it really does help other people to find me and it supports my work. All right, so without further ado, let's talk about some of the ways I like to harvest and dry my herbs, because that's primarily the way I like to use my herbs is as a tea. So I like to harvest them and then dry them first. Right now in my garden, the chamomile is going wild. I'm harvesting chamomile, I guess, like every 2 to 3 days. And this is just about half of a harvest from the other day. And so with small flowers like chamomile and even larger flowers, like most of the flowers that I gather, I like to dry them in baskets. So I have a huge collection of different baskets. And what I love about drying my flowers in baskets is if you bundle dry them, well, either what happens is with chamomile, like let's say you wanted to bundle dry it, kind of like this is some nettles, is that means you have to cut the plant down. And with plants that flower like chamomile, and calendula, if you harvest the stem, then you can't harvest more flowers, because what's cool about harvesting chamomile is if you just pick the flower heads off, you leave the stem and then all of the other flower buds, and it will just keep producing flowers all summer long. And that's what I want. So I don't chop them and bundle hang dry them. I just pick the flowers so that I can keep going back and harvest. What I love about baskets is that they naturally wick moisture away so that the plants don't mold. They also have airflow around them so that the plants can dry in all areas. So what I like to do is I will harvest my fresh flowers, put them in a basket. I try to spread them out because you don't really want them touching. They will touch, might always touch at some point, and they'll shrink up. But what happens is if you have them piled, like stacked on top, then the air can't get to all the flowers and you end up maybe risking the chance of having them mold. So I'll usually try to spread them out as best I can. Often I'll have to spread out in multiple baskets. And then what I'll do is after maybe the first day or day and a half, I'll just give them a little shake. And I'll try to move the flowers around so that the other parts of the flower can dry. And that way I can get a fully dried flower. I also have harvested these flowers. These are linden flowers and also the linden leaves. So this is the medicinal part used, are the flowers. And they are kind of like modified petals, because the leaves are these sort of large heart-shaped leaves. So I don't pick those. Those are bright green. But for linden, you harvest these little sepals or these little petal-like leaves that are a really light green color. And so I just harvested all of those by hand from a tree. And then I put them in this basket. And so this basket has some really nice, you can kind of see through it. It has really nice aeration and they're perfect. They're perfectly dried. And the way that you can tell that they're dry is, I don't know if you can hear. Do you hear how they're crunchy? So I don't want to put these into a jar. I don't have any jars on hand. I'll have to grab one, but you don't want to put these into a sealed jar until the water is all gone. Otherwise, you might mold, right? So these, when you hear that crunchy sound, you know that they're dried and then they're ready to be stored in a glass jar. Same thing with my chamomile flowers. Do you hear that? They're going to be a little soft because there's so many oils in these little flower heads. They're still a little squishy, but you can see that they're dry, they're not moist. So these can be ready. These are ready now. They've been drying maybe for about like 5 days, and they're ready to be put into a container. So again, I really like basket drying for flowers and for more fragile things too, or for things that I don't necessarily want to cut down to bundle dry. Now let me show you the other way that I like to dry my herbs, which is using the bundle dry method, which is really good when you want all the aerial parts. So when you're looking at your herbs and it calls for aerial parts, that means everything that's above ground, which includes the stem, the leaves, and the flower. So here I have from my garden, this is Monarda didyma, also called scarlet bee balm. And this is Monarda fistulosa, which is the purple, which is called usually like the native or wild oregano. Both of these, the aerial parts are all used. So if I want to bundle dry them, I'm going to just harvest a bunch. I want to have enough stem that's open. And then I just like to use hemp or twine, and I tie it in a knot at the end. So you can just see it's just one piece of string. Maybe it was about 12 inches. 8 inches. And then I tied a knot on the end, and I've got two little ears, like bunny ears on the top. And then all I do is I put it around halfway. Okay, so I've got my hole here, and I've got my bunny ears here. And this is a nice trick that you can teach the kids. The bunny goes through the hole, he goes up and out, and you pull the bunny ears, and it just cinches. Do you see that? It cinches around. And then I can tie these around, maybe like if I have a pole that I'm drying them on, or I can just hang them on a hook like this. And the nice thing about this method is that as the plant dries and it loses its moisture and it shrinks, the tightness, gravity is going to pull and it's going to keep getting tighter and tighter. And that's going to prevent my herbs from falling onto the floor and getting dusty and full of dog hair and who knows what else. So that way I can make sure that my herbs stay where I place them. So this is really great for if you're drying leaves, like these are my nettles I dried a few weeks ago, just perfect. And this is an important thing too, is when you're drying your herbs, you can hear these are crunchy, so they're ready, but the color is important too. That if you wait too long and you let them sit for like 3 weeks, a month, then these are going to start to turn brown or they're going to get really pale. And if you lose color, you're losing vitamins and minerals, you're losing potency. So once they're dry and they still have their color, that's when you want to, I like to strip them off the stem and then put them into a jar for storage. Okay. And let me just show you, I'm going to grab a few jars so you can see what they look like. So with my chamomile, this is some of the chamomile. I've got like 3 jars. I've got 1 downstairs, 2 in here. But this is how I like to store them. So I'll pour the chamomile once they're fully dried into the jar. And then there's a few different options for how you store them, like what lid you use. So one option, which is kind of, I think, the way that I learned, was you want it to be airtight. So you use a lid that's tight fitting, and then you just store it out of direct sunlight because the sunlight will start to degrade your herbs. You'll lose the color. It'll just start to look like brown hay. And when you smell it, it won't have any smell. And you want, like basically you want to keep them dried. Like I think Jim McDonald, he says the best herbs are those that are freshly dried. They're dried, but they're still fresh. They still have color and scent to them. Now, the other way of storing them in jars is something I learned from herbalist Misty Cook recently at the Midwest Women's Conference. And she was saying that, I forget which people are her ancestors, but they're from like the Wisconsin and New York, like Albany area. And she said her grandmother always used cloth she would take a glass jar, but then use cloth and then use the top of the mason jar. And she said that that was because the plants are still alive and that they need to breathe. And I love that, but I also love it because if there was any moisture, this is my elderflower that I harvested earlier this spring. If there's any moisture in there, it's not going to get trapped and condensate and mold. It will go into the cloth or whatever you have on the top. So I thought that was really like, there's many reasons why I think this is such a beautiful way of storing your herbs. Now, one downside is that you are going to get some air exposure. So they might not last quite as long as if you have them completely sealed off. However, if you're using your herbs within a year or a year and a half cycle, it's probably fine. You're not going to lose that much. So I'm slowly going to start switching over my freshly dried herbs to using cloth as the lid. So that's one way. And then I wanted to also show you, here is my lemon balm from last year. And what I like to do, it's called garbling. A cool word, to garble. So to garble is literally to strip the herb from the stem. So here's my nettle. Once it's dried, it's not very pokey. So I just like to take my fingers and slide them down. And then I gather all the herb in one hand, and then I crumble it into my jar. And then I just put it in the jar, cap it, and then I have my herbs. And then you want to label too. Make sure you label, especially things that are just green, because you might not know what they are. You might smell it and be like, that smells kind of like catnip. Could be, could be sage, like if you're not 100% sure, you're not going to use them as much. So make sure that you label. I like to label the name and then the year that I harvested. So this was my lemon balm from last year. I need to use this up because I've got fresh lemon balm I need to add and dry. So that's just some tips of how to store it or how to harvest, how to dry your herbs. And then these dried herbs have a lot of different functional uses. I love using herbs as teas, and they can be used as tonic herbs that you drink all day long, like lemon balm is really good for anxiety. It's also mood lifting. So that could be just something that you drink, you make a big quart of and drink throughout the day. You can make teas for sleep, like chamomile is a wonderful nervine relaxant for helping you fall asleep. But you can also make infused oils. So you do need to use dried herbs. That's much easier than fresh. So you can use these dried herbs and infuse them in oil. And I don't think I have any to share right now, but you can make a salve. I just made this salve with calendula not that long ago. So I just used jojoba oil and I added in my calendula, and I think there was burdock in there, burdock root. They were all dried. And I infused that for like 48 hours in a hot bath. And you can do it longer, you can do it up to a week. And then I strained it out. I mixed in some beeswax, and then I have this lovely salve that I can use on my skin, on scratches, on burns, just as general skin moisturizer, because, air conditioning can be really drying. So this is really nice. And it's interesting that a lot of oils are actually have some natural sunscreen in them. So like coconut oil has very low, it's like 5 SPF. Carrot seed oil has up to, I think, 10 or 15 SPF. So even just putting oils on your body, not only if you have herbs in there, is it going to heal and help repair the tissue and strengthen the tissue, but you're also going to get a little bit of natural sunscreen, which I think is important to keep us from burning and getting skin damage. So the shoulders especially, they really get lots of sun in the summertime. So you can make yourself an herbal infused oil and use that every day. And yeah, that's what I have for you. So there you are. And let me know if you have any additional ways that you like to dry herbs, you like to store them. I've got like a little cabinet and then a shelf that's away from direct sunlight where I like to store mine. So all of those, as long as they're, you're not getting them with sunbeams on them, they'll be good for a few years. And isn't that nice to have your own apothecary so that all year long, for whatever you need or your family needs, you can just brew a tea or make an oil. Easy peasy. All right, everyone. Have a great day. See you next week.